We have a powerhouse panel to discuss the challenges of data transformation and how to engage your whole organisation to become data-driven. So please welcome to the stage Emily, who's the Head of CX Strategy and Data Intelligence from Foodstuffs. Mark Thompson, who is the Head of Insights and Planning at 2 Degrees. Pick a seat, any seat. Fiona Stewart, who's the GM of Marketing and Strategy at Briscoes. Rachel Harrison, who's the Head of Analytics and Insights at ASB. Just getting mic'd up. Carmen Vislich, who's the founder and CEO of Data Insight, who you will have met plenty of times today. And I'm going to leave the stage, but we'll just wait for one more second. You can come and stand up here.
Okay, fantastic.
And while Alex is still just getting finished, but Alex Tran, who's the GM of Commercial at Genesis Energy. Welcome.
Fantastic, and we do really have a powerhouse panel. If you haven't picked up on already, we're wanting today to be really informal and really interactive. So this is a phenomenal panel of expertise, and luckily we brought some diversity. Thank you, Mark. Somehow we've ended up with a lot of ladies. We're bringing diversity to you in data, but really wanting to encourage your questions and your thoughts to really learn from these experts that have lots of experience with them. So I'll probably start off with Emily, actually, down the end there. So Emily works at Foodstuffs, and obviously you've got lots of challenges around the North Island and South Island and different franchises. So what are some of the things that you've seen in terms of the attitudes changing towards data in your business over the past 8 years that you've been with Foodstuffs?
Yeah, great question. Well, I guess when I sort of started out at Foodstuffs, it's fair to say we were kind of drowning in data, but we had very little insight, if any at all. Foodstuffs is an owner-operator cooperative organisation, which kind of brings its own unique challenges. It's sort of like having lots of bosses, like about 400 bosses. And I guess for us, we've got a long history, we're a 50-year-old business. And up until the point, when I got there, I guess there was a lot of intuitive style decision making, and it had actually worked for the business up until that point. But then we got the disruptors coming in. We got new online, subscription services, My Food Bag. Now we've got Uber Eats. The whole market is transforming really rapidly, and that model just wasn't working anymore. So I think the business very quickly we reached that tipping point where suddenly it was like, gosh, we're not gonna survive unless we start to listen to the data and actually become incredibly customer orientated. So I think probably within about 18 months of being there, we kind of went from, hey, I know best, I've been in the business for 30 years, to, wow, can you please give me the insights? And everything that we did that was a major kind of strategic move was based around insights and data. And to the point now where sometimes I wonder whether we might have gone a little bit too far, whether we lean too heavily into needing too much insight and data and move away a little bit from that art. So we're trying to find that balance at the moment.
That's some really great insights, and I think the key takeouts, to your end point, that actually there's all, it's all very well having data, but you still have to make decisions out of it and action that, or you're not carrying through the value. But also your recognition that your challenges in the market have evolved and the competition has evolved, and it's not so much that Foodstuffs is competing with Frogs down the road and playing on the same battlefield, but is those new startups that are coming and changing the game. And I guess in every single vertical we're seeing that. Mercedes used to compete with BMW, and today their biggest competitors are driverless cars and Uber, and everybody changing the game. So I guess that's the need for speed. So amazing transformation and great insights. Moving on to Mark. So it's been great to work with Mark as well over many years, and now I guess you've gone to 2 Degrees. How do you, and I was talking to somebody in the break as well around this, how do you do the challenge of working with a smaller team against a couple of very larger organisations who have got the big teams that you're competing against? So what are the top tips and lessons and challenges that you use?
Well, it's always an ongoing evolution, that's for sure. Look, one of the attractions to the role of 2 Degrees is it's the challenger brand, and I think if you're the challenger brand, you actually need to have that insights in place to drive forward and drive the opportunities that you can see, and sort of you're in an offensive strategy against two big players who are in defensive strategy. I think one of the challenges that that has sort of been given to me over the last 18 months of being in the role is to, I suppose, take that information and translate it back into the organisation, an organisation that's still in, while we're 10 years old, we're still very much still in startup mode and still fighting a very good fight. But you know, the problem there is you have a lot of good ideas, but how do you prioritise against those? And one of the things we're trying to do and spend a lot of time on, as just one example, is connecting our operational data, what people are actually doing with our experience data, and out of that we're trying to size the prize of all those ideas that you're sort of taking through. And so that's how we see that we can be a little bit more nimble in the background to take on the big players when and it helps when they're distracted, as may be the case at the moment. So, you know, we're trying to sort of find those sweet spots and build our market share and our opportunities in the areas that maybe have not been looked after by our big competitors. But it's a huge, enjoyable part of the role, but it's also very challenging to sort of fire that one through.
Fantastic. And I guess, you know, as a startup myself that grew bootstrapped organically, it does force you to be very disciplined when you have limited resources to be extremely focused on, you know, where you're going to get impact. But I guess it was really interesting. We spent some time with Google earlier this year, and, you know, I was all excited like a schoolgirl going, you know, well, what are your top challenges? And they said, oh, you know, just not enough people and too much to do. And I'm like, you've got 30,000 data scientists. You know, tell me that it stops at some stage. And I'm like, well, so how do you choose? You know, and they just said they focus on impact. Everything they do, they write metrics to say what's going to have the most impact, and that's what they do. And I guess as a small organisation, that'll be, you know, a constant way to think about it. Fantastic. Moving on to Fiona, and Fiona's one of the amazing practitioners in data. She's always been such a privilege to work with. So Fiona, at Briscoes, a large retailer where you don't really have customer data and no loyalty program, how do you actually go about, you know, creating data-driven culture and metrics?
Yeah, I guess, you know, for Briscoes, this is all like quite a new area for them. You know, we live and die by the sale. And, you know, our Briscoes lady out there. And I guess, look, we'll just talk about Briscoes. Rebel is another beast in itself, but we do have an opportunity with Briscoes, and it's about taking the guys on that journey because, you know, when you're in a sale kind of mode and mentality within retail, it's kind of like that next heroin shot of, you know, what's the next number we need to get to and how do we get it and how do we nail, you know, all our competition. And they sort of go, so you want to go and look at baskets and you want to look at what these consumers do and which house they come from, and then you want to go and ask them which colour they like, and they sort of go, look, you know, we're in for the big bang, not the little bang and the slow grow. But I think just like, you know, these guys have said, you know, the competition out there, especially in that retail space, is becoming harder and harder, and we've got some big players coming into our market, and Kmart's in there, and they do a fantastic job within, you know, their social media platforms, and we've got IKEA coming and Costco. And for us, you know, you've got to look after your loyal shopper, because without having a really great insight into why they shop with you, what their life cycle's like, you know, what is happening in their changing home environment, which is changing rapidly at the moment in New Zealand, then you're going to lose them, because there is an element or a proportion of consumers out there or shoppers that actually want the brand to really get them. And, you know, I have to keep stressing to the business that, yeah, sales work and, you know, that appeals to, you know, a wide audience, but there is a group of consumers here who tend to be more loyal to your brand than anyone else, who really want the brand to understand them and to talk to them and to drive information and offers to them when it's appropriate. So I guess, you know, we are on this journey, and we're looking forward to working, you know, with Data Insight and the data that we do have, even though it's pretty simplistic, and it's about taking the business on that kind of journey to say it's not for everybody, but if we really want to hold on to those loyal consumers that actually make our revenue line spin, then we need to nurture them and look after them. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's never easy, but I have learned over the years that it's baby steps, and, you know, taking the business on that journey and not to jump too far ahead, otherwise they kind of lose the plot and want to know where you spend all your money. So, yeah.
I think that is just gold what you've finished up on, because having worked with Fee, through her career with different large corporates that are very much, she takes the challenging ones on the beginning of the journey, and it is about baby steps and creating incremental value throughout the process, and that is really key to get the business's support and get the leadership support and engagement ongoing to support that journey, because it is very much a journey. So, if you've got time in the break, Fee's done amazing things with no data or little data, and always very much thinking, well, what can we do rather than what can't, and I think that's fantastic. Rachel, so been an amazing journey working with you over many years. So you've built a team at ASB, and I guess created this hunger for data through growing it throughout the business there. How do you balance, I guess, when everybody wants data and insights and you've got a limited resource team, and again also prioritization? What are your top lessons there?
So I think for us it's about focusing on delivering value and learning more about our customers. We've been lucky enough that we started a new team. We had some really passionate stakeholders, so working with them and knowing that they were using our insights, so that usually gets a few ticks for me if I know they're going to action what we're doing and actually take it right through to deliver. And that just really opens the doors with lots of other people coming and saying, we've got these problems, can you help us with those? We're quite lucky that we're a PAM bank function, so we work on anything. So we've worked on stuff for HR and other areas. So we've just really prioritised on who's going to use it and the value that it can deliver for them.
That's great, and I think one of the things that we've seen that works really well is a little bit of templating, saying, well, actually, what is the priority, what is the value, and what is that they actually have a little bit of a not a barrier to resource, but actually a little bit of structure around not just actually going, well, now it's here, we all want it, and we create this beast that becomes quite self-fulfilling. So I think that works really well, and it's been exciting to be part of the journey and seeing how much that's grown. Alex, so Genesis is really well known for doing some awesome things in Agile, and I guess different businesses in the room that we work with are in different stages of this journey. I guess what are your top tips on how do you actually go about that, and then also some of the lessons learned along the way that you wish you'd known?
So it's been about 3 years since Genesis started the Agile journey, and along the way I think the things that we learn the most is that we want to be agile and not do agile. And I think the difference is that we bring in the principle of Agile, which for me nailed down to 3 things: the permission to fail, the license to create, and the expectation to succeed. And I think we started out with an analyst team where each analyst would be dispersed into a different squad, and the whole point of getting a squad together with people from different functions is to get the product out to the customer as fast as possible. And so the requirements of the TAM from an analyst perspective is to do things in the moment, creating lists, doing very quick analysis. And I think along the way we've learned that there's a missing piece around the foundation of analytics that's missing when you disperse all the analysts into different squad. For example, the churn propensity model, the customer lifetime value model, all those foundation cannot be accomplished when you have analysts in different teams. And the lack of brain power when the analysts come together and utilizes different skill sets. One's really good with modeling and one's really good with triangulating data points. That create the value that otherwise we wouldn't have. So I think after about 6 months we realized that we would create more value if we pull back the analysts together and create our own squad. And I think the lesson learned is that we're still taking all the principle in terms of how do we prioritize backlog, creating the conversation with stakeholders and manage that. But we want to make the concept of Agile work for us and not us as a servant of a concept. So I think we're still evolving over time, and I feel that that's the core of Agile, is that to just make it work for us. If it doesn't work, we change it up. There's nothing to lose.
That's fantastic, and I think that's a really key point that, there's lots of principles around Agile or, any of the principles we're talking around today, but each business is unique, your customers are unique, what you're trying to do is unique, your data is unique, and you have to recognise that, that what you're doing is, not going to be just textbook, and having the courage, as you say, to shift and iterate, and very much at both data and velocity, we talk about better never stops, and better never stops just means no matter what we're doing, it's constantly changing, and sets that expectation as a culture with our people that actually better never stops means we're constantly evolving and optimizing. There's no complacency, and actually it's having the courage to shift as you need to. And awesome to hear that you moved the analysts back into each other, which is not the traditional tribe structure, but they actually recognize that that's not working for you. And I guess that's also a really key point, that we talk about data scientists and we talk about analysts and we talk about, now doing dashboarding and now doing models, and we're going to talk about AI. It's recognizing everybody's got different strengths and actually making sure the people in your team play to their right strengths, and all analysts aren't the same. It's just like, well, there's lots of people that can all be a chef. I might be a sous chef. I might be really good at desserts. I might be good at this. They're not all doing the same thing, and actually putting people playing to their strengths and putting them in the right positions in your team and iterating it as you evolve and as you grow your strategy is really important. And what I saw really happening at Genesis is, I guess, the collaboration across the business, which is very much what Agile is about, that all the teams are talking to each other. And I think you guys had me for a stand-up, and I thought I'm just going to turn up and have a small team, and there was about 90 people there for this morning stand-up across the whole business. And I guess it was a real testimony to you guys, and to how important what you're doing with data, from a top level, and how supported it is at Genesis. So it's been really exciting to be part of that journey. So now it's time, I guess you've got a little bit of a flavour for everybody's expertise and the journey that they're on. I guess moving to the floor to take some questions for our panel, and I can't see anything, so put your hands up.
All right, I've got a couple from Slido sitting here, which will get us going. How do we go about convincing leaders in our company on the value of investing in insights?
Who wants to take that one?
I'll take
Emily.
it. Yeah. I've had to do this a lot in my journey, 8-year journey, too many times. I think what we tend to do is we go a little bit under the radar. And we take on some projects to prove out the insights and basically present it back to the leadership team. So if you kind of wait to, I guess, get their permission to do something, often it will never happen. So we're a little bit more entrepreneurial in this in our style, and we'll often go and be more proactive. We can see this opportunity over here. Let's go and prove out, and then we present it back to them. So just a slightly different approach to getting the wins.
Yeah, and I guess, supported by, top down very much as well. You've had CQ come on board, who's very much a big believer, and that's really exciting. So I guess some more new other questions, a lot of on the dashboard. What has been a main social hurdle in your organisations in getting everyone to embrace data-driven culture?
At 2 Degrees, again, you've got an organisation that is driven on being quite entrepreneurial, running from, shooting from the hip and just trying to make it work, and then you get insights people coming in saying, well, hold on a second, let's look at the opportunities and let's understand that. And I think you've got to get that engagement in the conversation. So I'm not sure I've understood the question correctly, but it's that social interface of actually having that conversation. We have a structure in our team at the moment. One of the things I'm trying to get our team to do is to be, instead of putting our foot in the door and inviting ourselves into the conversation, we're trying to get invited into the conversation. And we are starting to achieve that. But just to take Emily's point earlier on, is you put some proof points down, and when you're succeeding, when somebody comes along and said, oh, that thing you did for Jack, can you do something similar for us? Right, that's the start of the conversation. That's the social conversations that you've got to start having.
Fantastic. We've got another one. Do you think Agile helps or hinders the use of data in organisations? Does anyone want to go either way? Help versus hinder?
I guess every kind of operating model works and doesn't work in your way. You can't find a perfect, operating model that just put in an organisation and it works. And it very much depends on the culture. And to build on what you said earlier, I think one of the challenge, Agile or not, is that you're getting not enemy, but the non-believer, the data non-believer, closer than ever. It's so much easier to get someone who already believe in insights and data to get along on your journey. But I think it takes courage to get the ones who always fight back and have doubts closer to you and really understanding with the why and take them on that journey. And it takes a lot of hard work to do that. But I think once they change to believe, I think they'd be the one that advocate for the data part in your organization.
I think you're right, and it's demonstrating value there to add to that point. And actually, one of the clients in the room, I don't know if he's still around, it works for an agri part of a bank, and I remember he always talked about the difficulty because farmers know so much about gut, and even their lenders were all farmers and all on the road and know it so well, and it was quite a journey to take them on. And then in the end they were going, make sure you bring that data stuff when you come again, because they got quite excited about seeing visually the story that it was telling and the myth busting. And I think it's just making sure that you're telling the story in a compelling way for the audience and recognizing, you're dealing with right brain, left brainers, and not everybody wants to look at spreadsheets, and people want the answer. So again, it comes down to people as to what problem you're solving to get the buy-in. So there's a few more questions here, although before I read them off the Slido, does anyone in the audience want to rather just put up their hand and ask any questions?
Just to Alex, in terms of having your analysts all together and then moving to more of an agile methodology and then back together out of the squads, how do you journey your people, the actual analysts, through that change, making sure that they are adaptable? Were there any specific hurdles that you had to overcome along the way, or was it just all smooth sailing?
I think, yes. I think it's safe to say it was quite bumpy at first. And you have two analysts right in front of you in my team and who've been through that journey, so I can't really bullshit my way out of this. But
James and Selena are Chatham House rules.
Yes. But I guess Agile is still a fairly new concept for everyone. And especially for an organisation that's been seen as all like utility, I think is quite a massive change anyway. And I think the message here is go big or go home. So you got to fight until it works, because there's no other way around. And I think in terms of the people side of change, it's the same as any other change in other organisation. Even they're not doing Agile, but they're changing every day. I remember when I first joined, and it's fair to say that the team was really unhappy when they were being in a different squad, because of three things. The first part is around the mismatch between the skill set of each analyst in each squad. So you would have very experienced analysts, 15 years of experience pulling marketing lists all the time. And you have a very junior analyst asked to do very complicated churn analysis. And they have no way to bounce idea and to learn, because someone else has already got priority from their own squad. So that's one. The second part is the missing foundation that I talk about, which is quite fundamental. You can already go as far with the stuff that you've got, but you've got to build and raise the bar before you can move a little bit further. And that's the part that's missing. So the short-term versus the long-term part. And the third part is the brain power, where the junior can learn from the experienced analyst, different skill set. So I guess it takes time to recognize that, these three things are quite fundamental, and it's not going to work for us, no matter how we shuffle the skill set and capability. So that's when I said we need to pull back. We need to build the capability, the foundation that we need, and maybe we review it in 6 months' time, in a year's time. And if it's working for us, then we keep going ahead with it. If it doesn't work, we think about something else. And I think the message throughout that journey is that, you know what, we're just going to be very adaptive. In the evolution is saying that the most adaptive animal is the one that lasts. So if you love Genesis and been working in the team in their environment, the only way to do it is to adapt, or else you just find a way out, I guess. But I didn't say that. But I guess it's to build the agility for the team in terms of, and it's quite hard when you look at analysts who and I was laughing so hard when you talk about changing desk with analysts. So they like certainty, and when you talk about we're moving and we're moving back, so you can imagine. But I guess I have a really great team, and they do bond together, and the certainty that I give them when we're moving back together, we're going to have a product owner that kind of shield you guys from all the uncertainty, that we're going to work with stakeholders. I think that's still working well after about a year now. Yeah.
That's fantastic, and I guess thank you for the authenticity to share that much, because we've all been to conferences.
I have to be there right here.
Oh no, I think it's been throughout the day, because we've all been to conferences where there is a lot of bullshit and smoke and mirrors, and actually no one learns anything, and you just have to go and use their product, and actually that's definitely not the case. You definitely don't have single customer view, and because of how you're treated, and I guess so. It's about actually rather sharing the lessons learned, and important points that you made there in terms of actually recognising the collaboration and continuous development of analysts, because any good analysts want to keep learning and evolving and also teaching, and so that mix and that power is really important. So I guess it comes against the agile principles of separating everybody out and having them each in a squad or a tribe or whatever you want to call them, but actually there's that magic and the collaboration, and we see it very much in our team where actually the togetherness and the different ways of thinking and the I guess also the quality control is really powerful. So really applaud you for making the move back, even though it wouldn't have been an easy one with nobody likes to move, and it's setting the culture and expectation that you're going to keep optimizing and changing. Other questions? Yeah.
My observation of many analytical people that I've worked with through the years is that they can be very creative, but they are also generally pretty introverted. Does the panel have any expertise in using or bringing out that creative ability from analytical people?
We were actually having a conversation about this at the break, and I think Mr. Dashboard, Neil, was saying that he said something which was quite interesting, because we worked on quite a few different businesses together, and he said, when I get this brief and it's like 20 pages long and it just tells me what I should be building, he said, this is sad. He said, because he wants to be a bit creative, but he said, what I really want to understand is I can build you anything, but let's really understand what you want to know at the end of it, but also where do you want to go to. So it's not just about getting something built and done in a time frame. It's a really understanding, if we get this right and we go on this sort of journey, by the end of it, the products that we produce from a very analytical perspective will deliver to the greater business over time. And I think that's part of really, I find analytical people quite strange, and
Speak for yourself.
and in the detail. But I need them to work with, because otherwise I'm up here doing my floaty stuff. But I still
whiteboard with me.
Yeah, with the whiteboard with Carmen, which is quite frightening. And then Ben and Claire and that are sitting there going, oh, here we go again. But it's important to kind of work through how do they tick and what do they need from it, but don't stifle that creativity that they have too. So I guess it's just trying to find that balance. And getting them in the headspace of where you're going and what your business needs, as much as understanding what their restraints are and what detail they kind of need as well. It's kind of fun, and there's never one answer for everybody because everyone's different. But yeah, it's quite interesting with Neil. He's quite structured, but he doesn't like it being told to be structured. So.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, we try and look for, and it's not easy, left brain, right brainers actually in the data insight business, because they bring the best of the commercial outcomes and the creativity with the detail of actually executing. But most people either have a skew left or right. And I think it's recognising which is your preference, and then also recognising how you collaborate with people that are not, and that are different and complementary. And one of the best articles I've ever read is called Makers versus Managers, and it talks talks very much that makers, who are kind of the analysts and the developers, and we have a lot of those in the Velocity business and a lot of analysts in the data insight business. And you imagine, those detailed people that want to be coding, and then over here is me going, and coming up with these all big ideas and a lot of whiteboards. And so it's actually recognizing how do you work together and actually talking through that, that we're really different. That, I know when I come wandering around, clip-clopping, I can see some of them running for cover going, oh my God, here she comes, and I'm going to interrupt them, and I know that annoys them, but then I'm also excited and I want to tell them right now because that's my personality. And we talk about that a lot, because then everybody realizes, oh, okay, you're not just trying to be annoying, that's how how you are, and you're not just trying to be difficult, that's how you are. And so it's classic people, but actually really addressing that, because you can't succeed if you don't collaborate across your business, across IT and across data and across marketing and across their whole business suite. You'll never become data driven. So you have to understand what drives them and what do they need, and actually openly address the differences in the way of thinking and how everybody wants things, because that's how you'll solve the problem with the data as well. So it's a really good question, Hamish, and I think it's a lot of still these silos in businesses that we see because of that. Anyone else want to add to that? Right.
Yeah, I like to be able to bring out the best in people. So I actually love the challenge of somebody who maybe likes to operate differently, because then I can figure out how to get the best out of them. Mark and I were talking at the break about, I had one data scientist, and so he was a bit quieter and I didn't hear much from them. Now I've got 3, and there's this nice little buzz, and in fact they have data science parties and all sorts of stuff, so the vibe can totally change because they've found their little niche and their way of working together, which is pretty cool.
I'll just add another point. I mean, the reality in the market at the moment to find good people in a space is really difficult, and it is more an introverted type individual. So one of the things that we don't really flex on at all is when we recruit people, obviously we're looking at skill set, but we're looking at cultural fit. We're really looking at, is somebody inquisitive? Are they going to ask the questions as to what is it you're trying to do? Are they going to look at the information when they send it out and go, actually that number doesn't seem right. Am I going to push this out, or am I going to go and investigate it further? And if you move into the campaign side of things, you can get some great campaign people who can build campaigns as they're asked to build, but they don't understand the life cycle of why it fits in. They're not right. And so it's trying to get that balance. It is a really challenging recruitment market in that space.
I think it's going to continue to grow, and I guess it's part of our thinking around today, because many of you that work with us will know we've got a 3-step testing process, and it makes or breaks them, and we can go through many that don't pass it, and it's very much trying to get those that can interpret the question and actually present their answer. And you can code, that's great, but there's a whole lot of 2 other steps. And I think that as an industry and as a community, it's something that we really have to think about. What can we do to actually bring this talent through? Because I'm not knocking universities, but I was on the advanced analytics board of one of them thinking, woohoo, I'm going to have all these candidates coming through, and we hosted them all for pizza. They ate a lot. They were there for hours. And I said to the team, I'm not going to be able to cover all of them. $100 Westfield voucher forever. Find somebody that we're going to hire. And you know what? Nobody found one. And it might be that they can code, but they couldn't actually talk through any problems or problem solve. And there's no one here is short of data. There's more and more data, and the value is solving that problem. So I guess it's something that we're quite working on and really interested to keep pushing and having more of these, to also look at how do we address the talent, because it's only going to grow. And I think everybody here is looking for somebody. Probably we should have rules. You can't steal the people when you come to one of these, especially not one of mine. I will sue you. There are some states in all of your contracts. But actually, it's an issue. And how do we, seriously, how do we what can we do as a community to bring through better talent and really address the talent shortage? Yeah. Stuart.
Swing the conversation back again. I'm a business change lead, and regularly I don't know the problem I'm solving. I'm after you to help me find that. How do you help people like me arrive at what the insights really are?
Let's take that. How do you help Stuart find what's the problem he wants to solve? Mark?
It's lots of question asking. I mean, it's just questions. We've got to boil down what the question is, and sometimes the question being asked, there's multiple layers that sit underneath that, and it's that inquiry piece that we have to go through, and what is it you're trying to achieve, and we can get to the root cause of that. Then it's about looking into the information that you have available and what we're able to answer, because it's not always the same. The questions that you ask them, what we're able to answer isn't always the same. So what can we do with what we've got? And talking to your point earlier, sometimes you can only move forward with what you've got, so you get as close as you can get. But it's to me, it's questions.
I find as well, just as a slightly different. Often I'll talk about what's your hypotheses.
Yeah.
So we start with your assumptions, your hypotheses, and then we kind of work back from proving or disproving that. That's sometimes the ways that we kind of uncover the answers.
And I think also, for example, recently, if I'm given a very broad problem statement, just build a customer segmentation that works. And
It works.
And I guess baby steps. First, do we have the basic common understanding of, let's say, customer segment that we have at the moment? And then after phase one, move on from, okay, now that we all in the room, we all have that baseline of understanding what's interesting from those, and then we just build from there, because there are some issues, problems that you don't even know what we're trying to achieve. You just feel like, I'm blind at the moment, I need something. So you would do a quick analysis, just light touch, and then build from there, from the conversation.
I think too, you need to define what the problem is, and often there's like multitude of problems, and it's about kind of drilling down to what actually is the problem or the challenge, or what is an area of the business or a question that I have that I actually don't have an answer to, and how would I find that out? And it's interesting, in retail there are a lot of problems and there's a lot of challenges coming through, but it's trying to work out what is the one problem that if you solve it, it's going to spin the wheel in the right direction and really shift the direction of the business. So it's kind of like collating all of those kind of questions that a business has, and then going, if I don't have an answer to it, then where do I need to go, to find those answers? So yeah, it's a mixture of, I think, what everyone said, but it's just really defining what is our problem, and often that is I don't have any visibility of, and that has come up a lot in a whole lot of different businesses. That I have been involved in is just lack of visibility, or pulling all of those queries in under one defining question. So.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we're seeing is, I think Peter Drucker said, you measure what matters. And for most businesses, if you look at the exec level, at a board level, at your, any publicly trading businesses, you have to share so much more in terms of, what is your growth, what is your trend, how are all these things, how's the business performing, and how do you make investments or decisions based on that information. And so I do think we've got kind of a growing requirement to say, well, actually, how many customers do we have? How many are we losing? Where are we growing and why? And so those questions very much drive the strategy top down, and often the queries bottom up to say, okay, well, at a business level, what are we trying to do? And so quite often we start with, where do you want to be in 3 years' time? And then how do we work back and put in the foundations? And as I say, some of them are not really sometimes exciting, going, well, actually, if you haven't got single customer, you're never going to get to the next best relevant conversation. So we have to work backwards to that. And at the same time, you've got all this risk in your business of data flowing, and without having GDPR and all the right governance steps in place. So it's also looking backwards to say, where do you want to be in 3 years' time, and what do you want to have, and how do we put those foundations in? So it's very much top down. We're seeing more and more as well as a trend. How are we for time? Or any last questions? Or a couple of minutes? Any last questions? Yeah, down the back.
Most industries are being disrupted from something that's coming from outside the industry. So how are you looking at information that may not be necessarily in the business, or are your businesses asking questions about kind of what the future might look like in 5 to 10 years' time, and how you could help with that?
I suppose it's a little bit different than, not different telco. I mean, we've got technology developments. 5G is a big question that's been asked across telcos industry-wide at this moment in time, and trying to understand those and translate those into real commercial benefits. So those are sort of some of the questions that we'll be dealing with. In terms of disruption in that space, you've got a different movement in terms of how the market's evolving. It used to all be about voice and text, and now it's all about data. Revenue streams are declining, operational costs are increasing. So how do you operate your business in that sort of environment? But yeah, the disruption piece from a player coming in and that side of things is a little bit more complex, I suppose, in the telco space.
So same in banking, I guess. We're talking about open banking, and we're looking at the fintechs that are trying to come in and be banks as well. And like Carmen was talking about earlier, we've got a lot of legacy systems and stuff that we have to do in compliance that maybe they don't even need to worry about. However, we do have customers that we know quite a lot about. So trying to deliver on what they want gives us a bit of an advantage. So how well we can really use that data and analytics to make better customer experiences is going to give us that advantage. Fingers crossed.
I think what we're seeing globally, that we're kind of missing a little bit of a trick here, especially seeing it in Singapore, is the collaboration that happens in smaller regions, and the opportunity then to defend or to innovate for the power of us, or the power of we. And, again, it comes down to, I think our second speaker today said it's crazy until you do it. But, if you think about the information that we have in disparate systems across different businesses, even here today, and if you were to anonymise that at a mesh block level and go, okay, here's some key insights, that you're sharing that are going to enable you to do more relevant segmentations, more relevant, trend analytics to understand what's going on. It's all about visibility to make data-driven decisions. So, I guess disruption is going to continue to come, and it's recognising, well, how do we leverage what we have better as a business, but also as kind of the magic of New Zealand, where you can get everybody in a room. Today there's, I think, 6, 7, 8 lenders in a room. There's utilities are all here, telcos are all here, as an example, to say how do we leverage what we have, but also how do we think a little bit differently, because you can't, combat some of these new entrants with the way we've always thought, or the way we've always been. And I guess that's where we see so much innovation coming out of Singapore, where they've set up these sandboxes of anonymised data to share and go, well, actually, you can now work together and you can collaborate, and all towards a better customer outcome, and solving a customer's problem. And they're having to do that more so in that region, particularly around the unbanked, where there is no credit data, and any data means you can say yes to a loan, but it's a different way of thinking. And I think, even at a government level, even here around, the sandboxes and data sharing and things, it's actually saying we have to create our own rules around what is okay and what is not okay, but actually we need to be a little bit more creative and innovative to say, actually, what if I talked to you and this neutral party sat there and we had a mesh block, no one's missing anything, and so it's kind of thinking differently. So I think it's a really good question. Any last questions before we move on to the next speaker? No? Well, thank you so much, guys. I think you're most around this afternoon, so please help me thank this amazing panel.